2 minutes.
It takes about 3 years to the mix. Okay? So you cannot start anytime you want to go to Mars. That's the reason why the UAE, the Mars mission, the Chinese Mars mission, all of them started similar. That is the primary reason for it. Right? So when you go for this travel is happening in the open space. Okay, so the radiation is quite high, and it is in microgravity. There is no gravitational force. So I'm adding hazards to crew members, and I'm taking the crew member from Earth to Mars. Right. So what happens to this human body? Right. So this human body is used to one gravity. Right. All the time. That's how the whole thing was evolved, right? So to understand this physiology, the biology, and what can happen to our system. So you see those little space station, what you have seen before. So we put the crew members there for minimum 6 months at least, right? And to see how they can adapt. Okay, what goes wrong with them, and how can we fix them? So that's the reason why so the space station research is going on right now. It is in the orbit for past 20 years. So it's an international collaboration, and so you have crew members from a number of countries. Why Mars? Okay, so Mars is the most hospitable planet close by, right? So that is the reason why Venus is not an option. Okay, the temperature is 462 degrees, right? And the sulfuric acid atmosphere, 9 times higher pressure. So imagine if I send a vehicle, space vehicle up there, it will be crushed. Okay, so we have done some what we call suicidal missions. So where we get to know a little more about Venus, right? And Mars has about like 2/3 of the gravity, right? And so that's more similar to Earth. And then we have 4 seasons: cold winters, okay, and the warm as less 20 degrees centigrade, and it has mountains, cliffs, valleys, okay. And when I say abundant natural resources of oxygen, it is not air. Okay, so this is in the form of CO2. This is 96% CO2 atmosphere. We believe like a water is under the at least 10 feet under. So there is a source to get it, and from all the oxides, okay, silicon dioxide, from aluminum oxide, or from all the oxides, we can extract oxygen also. So when I say oxygen rich, that is what I mean by that. And there is some protection from this atmosphere also from radiation. So it is relatively easy to explore this one, even though it is several million miles away from Earth. All right, so I gave you a time dimensions of how much time does it take to go there. So what does it take? So you need to carry everything along with us. So in this table, what I gave is basically input on the left side and the output on the right side. So in the input, I have given the red one, oxygen. We need to take food. We need to take along with us, right? Water and food preparation of the water and drinking water. So these are what I call essentials. The black ones are all basically luxury. Taking shower, okay, washing the clothes, all luxury. So if I take this much, then it means about 30 kilogram per person per day. Okay, so imagine I need to plan for 3 years, right? So you need to take that much of load from Earth to Mars. We cannot take it in one rocket, so we have to basically position all of them, at least 2 rocket load full of these consumables along with us before the humans go there. Okay, so the mission becomes really, really expensive. So since we are taking all of them, we cannot just waste them, right? So we need to recycle them. So the technologies associated with them are important. So I will highlight some of them. Another one is basically imagine we are going to live in a closed system, right? So imagine I showed you the International Space Station, right? So it's a little small capsule. We're hoping like 4 people we will be sending them. So imagine 4 people in this closed environment. So all this recycling concept, right? So you need to think about in that closed environment, right? So in thermodynamics, you talk about the closed system and open system, right? So this is a closed system for 3 years you can think of, right? So I'll touch upon some of the aspects. So we exhale carbon dioxide. So we need to remove them. So when we remove them, we don't want to lose this oxygen also. So you need to take care of that component. Then the water, right? So our output is urine. So you cannot just waste that one. So you need to reprocess the urine also, right? So so these are the recycling component in terms of the air purification part of it and water reclamation also. So then there will be other chemicals that may be generated during this mission also, right? So we need to monitor all these chemical components, right? Which should not be toxic to humans. So that is an important one. And then whenever we go, wherever we go, we take microbes, right? Billions and billions of microbes along with us, right? So we need to make sure and the contamination is minimal along that way, right? So that also we need to make sure it is in good shape. So I mentioned about water reclamation from urine, right? So before you can certify that is a drinkable water, so you need to do a total organic carbon analysis, right? The TOC, which you might have studied, maybe be using it. So we have a total organic carbon analyzer in the space station. All these hardware I'm talking about, it should work perfectly for 3 years. Any mishap along the way, you are in deep trouble. Okay, so that is the reason why we need to validate. Okay, all these hardware in a microgravity environment. I'll give you an idea why microgravity environment matters, because the gravity is out of the window. So when you say gas liquid separation, it doesn't happen. So you need to your entire hardware has to be re-engineered so that it will work in the microgravity environment, right? So this gives you an idea like what is the carbon environment in the atmosphere, right? Since it's a closed environment, so the gas and condensed water within the capsule basically mixes constantly. Okay, so if I take the water and if I do a total organic analysis, it will give you an indication of what is in the atmosphere also. In one of these incidents, this level went up. Then we figured out that our air revitalization unit is not working properly. So we had to find out what the compound is, and then we figured out how to clean this atmosphere, right? So this is for drinking water. Just to give you an idea, today's coffee is yesterday's coffee of everybody else. Okay, so that is your that's how the magic happens in the urine process analysis. Okay, so these are the astronauts having yesterday's coffee and today's coffee. All right, so then chemistry is important, right? So with this urine processing analyzer, to develop this hardware, basically in Earth, so they took urine samples from terrestrial people and they optimized it basically. So I will tell you later on, there is a bone loss that is happening as a result of no gravity, right? As a result of that, the calcium concentration in urine in space is double than what you have in terrestrially, okay? So imagine I'm putting sulfuric acid in my urine processing system to get a reasonably good water, then so the calcium sulfate, okay, will precipitate if my calcium concentration is double, okay? So this is an example of why all the scientists and engineers have to work together to get a clear idea how the hardware should be built for a space mission. This is an example, okay? So this is initially this is a disaster actually, because several $1 million have been wasted on this particular thing. So we have to redo everything else. So one simple chemical solution is instead of sulfuric acid, you can use phosphoric acid. Okay, so that solubility product is much higher than the calcium sulfate. Okay, so this gives you a flavor of how a simple chemistry can influence your space mission. All right, I talked about carbon dioxide removal, right? So here again, there are many ways of removing carbon dioxide, right? So in Apollo days, even now in the spacesuit, we use lithium hydroxide, okay? So it becomes into a lithium carbonate, but it's a one-way reaction. Okay, so you cannot regenerate your lithium hydroxide when you're in the space station. So we have zeolite basically. Okay, zeolite again, it's a kind of like a physiosorption, so you can recycle this carbon dioxide from the system. Then another system is an amine bed. Okay, so the efficiency is much larger in the amine bed, and then you have a system where these amines are anchored into a solid matrix. Okay, so that is the anchored amine bed. So those are the ways like you can remove this carbon dioxide. Another one is this Sabatier reaction, right? Sabatier is a carbon dioxide reacting with hydrogen to give you methane and oxygen. Okay, so you're able to get your oxygen back, right? So to get your hydrogen and whatever the water we take along with us, right? So you can electrolyze to get your hydrogen and oxygen, and you can use oxygen for your breathing. Why is this important? Okay, this is a big deal. Okay, meaning like in Earth, it's about 0.3 millimeter of mercury carbon dioxide. So even though we have all these systems, the carbon dioxide concentration is about 10 times higher in space station than Earth. Okay, so if you do not remove them, the concentration will keep going up. So the biological consequences in the beginning, it will be fatigue, then it's a difficulty concentrating, then irritability, then it's a performance decrement. If it is really high, you will die. Okay, it's as simple as that. And if you watch Apollo 13 movie, okay, so that is the crux of this one. Okay, so this is an Apollo 13. This is again, whenever you design your engineering thing on a long-term missions, okay, we have redundancy, right? But at the same time, the configuration should be replaceable, right? So in Apollo 13, what you see on the left side is a lithium hydroxide canister, and what you see on the right side is a lithium hydroxide canister also in two different modules, okay? So when one module failed, we are not able to take that one lithium hydroxide canister and just replace it, okay? So what's this reading on the Apollo 13 at the bottom left, okay? It's 15 millimeter of mercury, okay? It's really a dangerous situation, basically, okay? And so again, when you are in a development environment, right? So you can do everything in the lab, right? So when it is translated to engineering, and when it is translated to a system, and especially when it is translated to engineering the system, and these things are very important. So when you watch an Apollo 13 movie, that's what the lesson learned. You fail, but this is a successful one, basically, right? So this is right now in terms of the dates. It's 51 years ago this happened, okay, to the day, like Apollo 13. Okay, so in the carbon dioxide removal, like I was telling you about the swing amine bed reactor. So how the chemistry plays a role, right? So these are the aspects. So here, the chemists and chemical engineers and the system designers, all of them have to work together, okay? And the physicians, right? Because it's going to affect in terms of the toxicity component for humans, right? So all these elements have to be taken into consideration. This gives you a flavor. So whatever you develop in the lab, okay, in one small, in a smaller scale, then in a pilot scale, then in a large scale, all these things, parameters, as simple as viscosity, okay, all these things have to be taken into consideration. Okay, so this gives you a flavor on that part. Then I told you about the air quality monitoring, right? So you can measure hundreds and hundreds of compounds, but you cannot take that kind of a hardware. You cannot take chromatograph column. Sorry. And so it's a DMS, differential mobility spectrometer. So with this column, I put a thing as AQM1 and AQM2. So what we have found from toxicology is, okay, and based on degassing of these, whatever the material what we take for space missions, these are the potential compounds that could become toxic, basically. So we decided to measure these 20 compounds in real time, okay, in space, and we could not do it in one column. So that's the reason why we have two units like this. So so a matrix of them will be able to give us a good feel for what is the air quality of this. Again, it's a closed environment. Okay? And you can ask, what about ethanol? What about why do you care about that? And you might have studied in physical chemistry, azeotropic mixture. Remember, like I'm trying to get a clean water, drinking water from urine, right? So if I have ethanol in my system, okay, or methanol, then you will not be able to get a clean mixture. Okay, so you will become an azeotropic mixture. So that's one of the reasons why. Okay, acrolein is again a toxic one. The benzene, as you know. So these are the compounds we track them. Then we have an anomaly gas analyzer. Supposing there is a fire. Okay, so the products are hydrogen chloride, hydrogen cyanide. In terms of the carbon monoxide, right? Ammonia, right? So ammonia, we use it as a coolant, right? Supposing it leaks, we need to go and know this one. So here we use tunable diode laser. Basically, it's your vibrational spectroscopy, right? So if you take a vibrational spectrum of these compounds, okay, so you can take what I call a non-overlapping region and pick a laser. It's a tunable diode laser, right? So for each little component, what I have for each compound, so I have a tunable diode laser I can precisely measure. And here again, I need to give you an insight into calibration of your sensors, right? If it's an electrochemical sensor, right, you may have to calibrate almost every day, if not once a week. So supposing I transfer this idea of electrochemical sensor to an optical sensor, so what we have learned is the calibration stays there for years. Okay? So that is the reason why we prefer optical sensing system for all these sensors. All right, so I gave you a little flavor about this environment component, right? And then I need to give you an idea about what happens to the humans, right? In terms of the biology, okay? After you graduate, more and more the world will become an integrated way of looking at the system. Okay, so even though you're a chemist, so you will be working in an integrated group, right? So in that context, I thought this would be important. Okay, and along with that, I'll give you some highlights also. So in all of our human space missions, okay, when I'm taking a Perseverance to Mars, it's a different kind of a scenario. When I'm taking a humans into this one, right, into Mars, it's an entirely different story, right? So the radiation, it's a big deal in terms of the hazards. Isolation, okay, so now you might have realized isolation, what it means. Isolation means in this quarantine scenario, right? The lockdown scenario. Your emotions are very restricted into certain domain. Imagine I put four people into this little can and send them all the way 250 million miles. They have to be there for 4 years. Okay, you have to get along with them. Okay, and if something goes wrong, you need to fix them. Okay, so all these isolation-related issues results in mental health. It's a big issues. Mental health is a big issue. So we pay very close attention to that component of it. So even in this pandemic situation, you might have seen like a manifestation of the mental health related issues too. Okay? And the third component is the distance from the earth. So I cannot give a medical help to these people. So they have to be autonomous. It's 250 million miles away, right? So that really is a situation. The communication time difference, the maximum is about 20 minutes one way. So I cannot help them in any real time way. So I cannot take all the medications I want along with me too. So then the gravity is different. So I'm going from a single gravity to a microgravity for 6 months. I'm landing on 2/3 gravity for another 1.5 years. Then the whole cycle repeats. So the human body has to adjust to this situation too, right? But then I talked about this environment. I gave you some environmental related issue. As a result of all these complications, the risks are all you have bone loss, and you don't have to use your muscle thing, right? So you have muscle atrophy, just like if you're in a bed for 6 months. Imagine, okay? So that's what the kind of muscle atrophy you get. So the balance disorder. So your neurovestibular component basically it's thrown away because your vestibular system is trained for your one gravity with your eye coordination and the feedback from your feet, right? So then I have other issues also, neuroocular issues, sleep disorder, radiation-induced thing, and then a toxic exposure, right? So what we do in my day-to-day life is basically how to prevent this one, how to develop technologies, how to do our countermeasures, how do you do the treatment, okay? So that is what my day-to-day duty is basically. So I have about 14 different labs in my organization. So they take care of both on the research side and on the operation side to take care of these measures. So just to give you an idea, like in radiation, what happens in distance from the Earth, I give an idea, and in isolation and altered gravity, and then in the environmental part. I told you about the radiation. Okay, so when sun is really quiet, okay, so this is how your sun looks like actually, right? So when you have a sunspots, that's the time you get solar flares, right? So this is one of the solar flares, and I think you will see it. So sun is our primitive, what I call hydrogen-hydrogen fusion reactor, right? So the product is basically protons, electrons, neutrons, helium nuclei. Those are the products, right? So when the sun ejects this huge massive thing like coronal mass ejection, so these are the particles which you get from them basically, right? So when it reaches Earth, so we have been protected, okay? But if you're in the open atmosphere, and you will get affected by that. And this is not only radiation coming from the sun, we get it from galactic cosmic radiation also. What it means is basically we have other suns where the nuclear reaction is at a higher atomic number, okay? Even to the extent of the product may be iron, okay? So you imagine, so those stars, neutron stars, and all those other stars, right? So they generate, so their product is basically in the higher atomic number, right? So the proton going through your body is much different from your iron molecule, iron atom. Basically, this is an deionized iron, this thing going through your system. Okay, so the damage is quite significant. So I'll give you a few pictures. So when the real solar flare happens, so this is the one of those big ones. Just to give a size dimension, the Earth is in this on the side, right? So this gives you an idea how big these solar flares are, right? When you look at it very carefully, you have done mass spectrometry, right? So in mass spectrometer, you put a magnet, right? So the particles can be deviated. So you see a curved thing, and also some of them getting ejected, right? So some of these particles, the sun is a huge magnet also, right? So it tries to pull these particles back into the sun, right? That's your curvature, what you see. So our Earth is a little magnet, right? So this geomagnetic field is the one that protects us actually. So these particles can be pushed out of your system, Earth. So, but from this thing like Arctic Circle, there is a hole, right? There's a magnetic hole. So the particles can come through the system. So what you see is that's an aurora from a northern hemisphere. It's nothing but in your atmosphere. So you have atomic oxygen, nitrogen, OH radical, okay, water vapor at different domains, right? So these things get excited when these radiation interacts with them, right? So what you see is basically a fluorescent spectrum from this excited state. So in terms of the chemist, when you're studying spectroscopy, okay, for these oxygen atom and nitrogen atom, so this is your real-time fluorescent spectra coming from this kind of effect. Supposing I look at it from space station, right? This is how your aurora looks like, okay? When you look at the height difference, see the top one is red, and then you have a little blue, and then the other colors, the green one is coming. That gives you an idea of the different atomic species in this atmosphere, okay? So that's what it gives you a flavor, right? So this gives you an entirely different perspective. View from a space station is amazing. So when you have a lightning, it's like a fireworks. Okay, so I have watching fireworks from space station. What about Aurora and Jupiter? Yeah, Jupiter has a magnetic field too. So the Aurora kind of looks like that. And Saturn in the same way, and you get an Aurora too, right? So this kind of a cycle. Okay, I told you like in 19, the sun was really quiet. What it means that there is no sunspot at all. So if I count the sunspot down the years, so the sunspot increases, So this cycle repeats every 11 years, basically. Okay, so that is what we are following this for the past 200 years, basically 250 years. So this is the 25th cycle. Okay, so what you see in the red line is the projected cycles. This gives you an idea about the radiation scenario when you are traveling in space. Okay, this is again, it's called Van Allen belt. So your Earth is in the middle, right? The outside is electrons. The inner donut is basically a proton. Imagine this is your mass spectrometer in a bigger scale. Here, your magnet is your Earth. Okay, so these particles are lined up as based on the mass. Okay, imagine the higher atomic number will be more closer to the Earth, right? So this gives you an idea. So if you travel, so if you have to go to moon, right, you have to cross this thing like a Van Allen belt and go. So if you have to go to Mars, you have to, as soon as you cross this one, your protection is all gone. Okay, so that's the reason why you have to be super careful. I talked to you about the bone loss component part of it. So if you're in space, it's about 1% of the bone density you lose. Okay, so we have different countermeasures. So we have a bicycle, we have weightlifting machine, we have treadmill also. So this is the Sunita Williams running on a treadmill. Watch this one because she's tied to this machine. Otherwise, it's not going to give you any load on your human system, right? That's why she's tied with this machine. And weightlessness, right? So this gives you another set of complications, basically. Right? You can do all these interesting. You can fly, and so when you sleep, for example, right? Imagine a baby in the mother's womb, right? So this is exactly the same way. There is no gravity because the baby is floating in water, right? So here the crew member basically, literally, like in an environment where there is no gravity. So that's and they can float away. That's the reason why you can sleep in any dimensions. You can sleep on the roof and everywhere. It is as a result of the no gravity, the fluid from your leg and everything else comes to your face. Okay, so as a result of this, we have some complications. So one of them is basically eye-related issue. Okay, so the fluid pushes because your brain and eye are connected, right? So your fluid CSF basically pushes from this rear, and your eyeball basically becomes, when you say globe flattening, that's what it means. Okay, the normal globe gets flattened because the water pushes from the other side. Okay, your spinal fluid. Okay, cerebral spinal fluid pushes it, right? So then some of them get basically disc edema. Okay, and so those are the complications regarding biology. Okay, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. And so we have to track them basically. So you can take the retinal pictures, right, before they fly, during the flight. This is during the flight, and we have an OCT is also in a flight just to take the retinal picture. Okay, here comes the chemistry point of view. Right, so we know 10, 11 years ago we had a problem about these eye issues. We didn't know what the reason is because we are subjecting everybody, all the humans, to the same abuse. Abuse meaning we remove gravity out of it, and then they are exposed to radiation, and then isolation, and all these complications. Only 25% of them get these eye issues. What is the reason why it is, right? So I have a nutritional biochemist lab also. So they track 150 chemicals before flight, during flight, and after flight. So when they look at this data set, what they have found is basically the homocysteine level of these people who have susceptibility has increased slightly. It is not significantly higher. Okay, it is not a hyper homocysteine domain. It is somewhere and it increased slightly. Okay, imagine the average value is from 8 to 10. Okay? But we have a distinct idea. So this gave us an idea. Basically, it's something to do with your genetics. Okay, so we cannot do extensive genetic analysis for various reasons, and so when you look at the homocysteine in a cycle, Krebs cycle thing, right? The HCY, whatever you see up here, that's your homocysteine, right? So there's a lot of equilibrium that's going on up here, right? So if this concentration is higher and there is some of the other system is not working well, right? That's then what I call it as a crude assumption, right? So what the scientist did was, yes, I cannot do all the genetic analysis. So he took 5 alleles attached to these enzymes, right? So when you take all these things, he was able to show from about 70 crew members, and this particular allele is not in good shape. Okay, so this is the discovery of how it is associated with genetics. So then you go back to this Krebs cycle again. You see this thing like a B6, it's a vitamin, right? And you will have B12. Okay, so that's another vitamin here, right? So if I supposing this is not, this equilibrium is disturbed, how can I do a countermeasure in a very simple fashion, right? So if you give them this kind of a vitamin concoction, like so that may be able to compensate also, right? So we have in the beginning we didn't have a clue, so we have some idea and then some countermeasures. Now we have to show that like this one really works. So this is again an ongoing research to address this complication. So how simple disease conditions can be related to a fundamental nutritional biochemistry, how it is related to genetics, how you can relate it to countermeasures for a spatial missions. Okay, these things along the way we found out also all these things are also related to PCOS women. It's about 10 to 15% of this polycystic ovary syndrome. Women have the same issues too, right? So any discovery, whatever we find in this one, we find like it has solution sets for terrestrial conditions too. So that also you have to keep in mind. Another one is, okay, we talk about this coronavirus now, and we track, see, whenever the immune condition of the crew members also decreases, okay, when that immune condition decreases, you have lots of what I call resident viruses, okay, they're all suppressed, okay, so these inactive viruses in your system can get reactivated if your immune system is compromised. For example, shingles, like essentially like when you're in a high stressful conditions, or women in after 50, some of them get shingles. Okay, if you get if your parents, somebody has shingles, you know how painful the whole thing is, right? So we watch this virus counts before they fly, during the flight, and after the flight. So this virus shedding basically from saliva we can find out easily. Concentration comes up to 1,000. Okay, and if you're in 10,000 and above, then it becomes a honest to goodness shingles conditions. Okay, so this gives you an idea about what stress can do to you, and if your immune system is compromised, what it can do also. So we have done lots of research on this domain too. Okay, so we have a virologist and we have immunologists in our food. This is very important. Okay, and as you may know, especially in these conditions, pandemic conditions. So when you take food, you have a food chemistry students also in this domain. Imagine you have to pre-position all these food 5 years in advance, okay? Because you cannot count on the same flight as when you're going. Because supposing there is an mishap, there won't be food up there, right? So currently we have about 150 food systems for an International Space Station, but that will not hold 5-year shelf life, right? So to protect food from either the nutrient and even the taste and all other this thing, like in terms of decomposition and everything else, water vapor, oxygen, those are the two things, which again comes down to chemistry. Okay, so you have to keep this one away from oxygen. Okay, so all your material, okay, fabrication materials should be oxygen impermeable, okay, and water impermeable. And then you remove even the residual oxygen in there and load it with nitrogen. Right? So in this one, we have a rehydratable food items here. And so when you're ready, so basically like you can cut this pouch, add water, warm it up, and then you can eat. And so then again, like meat products, Okay, so irradiated meat products we have. Water, okay, it's as simple as water. So you cannot carry water everywhere, right? So what we do is basically we have beverages you can make in a powder. So when you are ready to drink, so add water into it, and then this water also should be clamped. Otherwise, the water will come out of it because there's no gravity. Okay, so you need to worry about that too. So this pepper and salt, you cannot take it as a powder because it will go everywhere, right? So you need to put your water, I mean like a pepper and salt. So you have salt, water, and pepper and water also. Okay, so this gives an idea about what the type of food technology we need to worry about. All these food we make in our own food lab, and all the research also we do in our lab, and along with other external companies too. This is for a psychological one. It's a very important one. Okay, because I have 4 people there in this little can for 3 years. Okay, so this is our chapati. So they call tortillas. So this is a very favorite food because you can put everything in there and roll it up and then eat that. And this is Sunita Williams. Okay. When you do this, okay, when you remove this gravitational thing and your sensing thing and your taste buds thing changes, okay, because the what I call the satiation component is based on your feedback mechanism, right? So when you have no gravity, the diffusion is basically restricted, so you cannot feel the taste. So what they do typically is load it with like a hot sauce, okay, along with this, because it is not that tasteful. Okay, then you have oxidative stress. I'm going a little over. Is it the time okay if I go a little bit more? Suresh? Okay, so here in the oxidative stress component, why? Because of this stressful component, right? And all these radiation, other issues, right? And you have an oxidative stress. So to compensate that, so you need to have antioxidants. One of them, food is a good one, right? So all these carotenoids in this food, it's excellent. So, and this is again another carotenoid, okay, which is very essential. Let me see. And when we are in space station, so we send whenever they send a cargo vessel, they send fresh fruits. But if you're going to Mars, this is not going to be there, so we need to worry about this one. So look at all the hardware in all dimensions. Okay, this is Scott Kelly. He spent in space for a year. Okay, so I need to thank all my people, and this is my lab right now. It's a new one. All the engineers, scientists, physicians, and astronauts in this effort. Yeah, with God's grace, make a difference. In any attempt you take, your passion, your perseverance, and most of all, your patience is an important component for any successful integrated missions. Yeah. With that, I'm going to stop and invite questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for speaking to the students about how chemistry plays an important role in space. Using several lively images and demos, have demonstrated and highlighted lifestyle, the food of an astronaut inside the space. Now, it's time for the interactive session. Students who are watching in YouTube can post their queries in the chat box, and those in Google Meet can ask their queries directly to her.
Yeah, students, now you can interact and you can ask questions. The sir is very eager to answer your questions. Yeah, you can ask. In fact, sir, as expected, this particular one to be a more interactive program. Rather than he alone presenting it, he wanted students to interact more with the presenter. So kindly ask questions, any clarifications. Yeah. So how to start up a career in this particular type of program? Is there any chance for our students to come and work there? Any possibilities?
So in to work in our organization is like you need a minimum green card and this thing like a citizenship. So that may not be a viable thing. But actually, like Indian ISRO is propping up basically human space exploration. So that's in their agenda. So they have research like opportunities in Bangalore. So that's where their headquarters is, I think. So you can interact with them in all capacities because I touched upon many domains, right? So from exercise physiology to nutrition to food packaging part of it. So there are many ways you can interact with them. And DoD is also, so all of them is also applicable to DoD related missions also. So it's in India, there are a lot of opportunities also up there. And so in the future, I will be. I have recruited a few of our chemistry students, alumni, Loyola students, and they will give a perspective on all other opportunities also. Okay, so I gave the space dimension. Okay, but they will give also like more research kind of a thing, opportunities with this.
Okay. What about the competitive nature of our scientists in India regarding space administration and people in US? Then definitely they are much better than us, you know very well. But how competent our scientists are to compete with them?
See, competency is not an issue at all. Okay, meaning
Okay.
like we are well trained. Learning the basics is the key thing, right? Because in all these examples which I told you, right, whether it is in mass spectrometer or it's an infrared spectrometer, all of them you learn the fundamentals quite well. And how do you do an integrated this thing? That is the key. How do you apply that your knowledge base in these situations, right? Supposing I have my urine processing system clogged up. What do you know? It's a simple question, right? It's an so in terms of fundamentals, learning fundamentals like you and applying to them in any situation is the key. So, but in terms of ability and training and all that, we are in par with them. No, there's no question at all. But the opportunity part, right? That is the important. So any big missions, right? All these missions, basically, it took, usually I'd say it takes three things. One is you need to have that technology that is available to you, and then you need to have resources, both human resources. I mean, that part, that's not a problem. And in terms of financial resources, the third component is a political commitment, okay? Because all these projects, they don't like come and go within a year. This is decades of work, right? So that political commitment to these things are also is an important in any big projects for that.
Okay. Now,
Sir?
apart from this, yes, sir. Yeah, you can ask questions. Yes.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, my name is Joel. I'm doing my PG second year. You were mentioning about food items that are consumed while we are in outer space. Are there certain kind of food that we should not take while we are in the a spaceship? Like, if we consume that, any kind of problem might happen to us. Is there any kind of food that an individual should not consume when he or she is in that spaceship?
Okay, so let me give you the context. Okay, so supposing I'm taking four crew there. So any space missions for that matter now, right? So we give them all our options, 150 options, right? So they pick their menu for 7 days. Okay, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? In before they fly. So then they have to eat this food for 1 week. And that is the food we are going to pre-position, right? So supposing you're allergic to peanuts or you're allergic to something else, right? So we figure it out before we fly, okay? And then that is the food you will get for your entire mission, whether it's a 6 months mission, 1 year mission, or in the 3 year missions also, right? So it is individually chosen one with the available menu. Right now we have 150. Maybe when we go to Mars, we may have close to 40, I think. So from that, when you do that, also nutritional component, right? So that's an important, right? So in terms of the allergy and all other stuff, that is how we weed them out. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Food chemistry students, if anyone is there to ask question, you can ask.
There was one question from the student, I think, about why Aurora you can see only in the northern hemisphere. One of the reasons is, so when you have a spherical magnet, okay, so the magnetic field is minimal in the poles, right? So that is the place, that is a location where these radiation basically come into the system. So if it is any other place, like our geomagnetic field pushes it away. So that is the reason why you see it up there. Another reason is also, and so they have what they call like a daytime only for 3 hours to 4 hours for a 6 months time frame, right? So you are able to see these lights in a very bright way. It's literally delightful to watch those videos, meaning it's like a dancing color of things. Okay, so it's basically your fluorescent spectroscopy in action in a continuous fashion. So imagine how pretty it would be, right? So that's the reason why they're able to see it up there. So even when I showed you the Jupiter and Saturn, it's only on the northern pole, right? Because that is where you have the pole, right? What I call magnetic pole, right? So this again, you need to think about it in terms of ozone depletion, right? So that is a magnetic pole. Supposing I have an ozone hole in my atmosphere, right? So your UV radiation can penetrate through. Okay, that's the reason why you worry about those compounds, right? CO2 and everything. Did I answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
How about the Chandrayaan? What we are from India, what they are launching. What about Chandrayaan becoming successful, sir? Is it a competition to US in making, because what you have been doing actually lunar dust where you are doing the study, will that be really a successful one with Indian mission that's being taken up? Already US has done it.
I have to make I can make a comment on this one. Landing on a south pole is hard. Okay, it is not easy, and we have never landed. Okay, meaning like whenever we like US went to moon, it's all in the equatorial region. Okay, so the reason why people wanted to go to south pole is you may get water. Okay, and here again, like people from different disciplines, they may have a curiosity why you are after water. Okay, I told you about the like a mass penalty, right? So you need this water for your drinking purposes, right? And you can use this water for a fuel, because I can get hydrogen and oxygen fuel if I electrolyze the water, right? So I don't have to carry everything else, right? And then the third aspect is biology. For biology, any microorganisms or anything else to survive, water is one of the components. Okay, there are other components also, but one of the components, right? So wherever there is water, so there is a potential like a light matter that we can find also. So the south pole of this moon part is basically you need sunlight for your like for your solar energy. At the same time, you need to have water also, but you need a cold place as well as a sunlit place, right? So it's quite hard. The land, see, in Mars, imagine so the landing is the hardest part. Nobody else has landed. Okay, they have tried for 30 years. Okay, only US has, well, they were successful for a few missions. Okay, we had failures too. Okay, landing is harder. Taking off from this thing is surface is harder. Whenever you take humans, taking off is again is a critical thing, right? And so landing is okay. Imagine, right? You're going from gravity to microgravity to 1/6 gravity. So your entire vehicle, basically, your dynamics, aerodynamics, was this thing like a optimized to that kind of a landing. Right? So even in Apollo, like when Neil was trying to land, and he has to move his vehicle, basically, like otherwise he would have landed on the crater, right? So it's literally flying a helicopter in 1/6 gravity, okay, and which he has never flown. Okay, he did test runs here. It's all gravity, right? And then that's again a fuel, right? So he had only 10 seconds fuel left before he lands, right? So it is quite hard. I mean, landing is not easy.
Okay.
Good evening, sir. This is Dr. Jacob. I am the faculty in chemistry department. Actually, as student point of view, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
All the students now, the second year PG students are in a mid-state. They are going to finish their masters. Some of them are really interested to do PhD or some other space-related research in the USA or other country. What are the essential requirement or eligibility? Is there any special entrance examination? So if they are interested, what shall they do? What are the opportunities available? Not only you already mentioned about the green card holder, but other than that, if they wanted to do some research related to space or in other universities in USC, what is the requirement? What is the eligibility?
I can comment on this. Lot of people like from my batch have come here like those days also, even my faculty. So it does not matter. See, even your PhD program is a learning program. Basically, you're learning how to learn. So that's the whole thing. This is another step actually. So you can pick any domain you want. So what we call, like as when I came last time around, I mentioned about it. Okay, so you should be deep in one domain. Okay, so basically your problem solving skill in the domain is very robust. Okay, how do you look at the problem? Like how do you design solutions? Okay, that's what you learn. Okay, and so you can pick any field you want. Okay, but then you need to be aware of how these fields are touching other fields also. It's very important because the growth right now is highly interdisciplinary and dynamic, okay, and it is driven by a lot of market forces and political forces, and now in the pandemic situation also you might have seen, right, because other forces drive all these things also. So you should be well prepared. It does not matter which discipline you study well for that domain, and then you explore. Okay, do not hesitate to venture into other domains. The main reason is what I may usually make a comment at interfaces. Exciting things happen. What I mean by that is basically if you're a chemist talking to a biology about a problem, and the perspective that biologists have is different from as a chemist. Okay, because I learned biology. Okay, in my on the job actually. So I did in tissue engineering. Okay, so I did a lot of work on tissue engineering. Okay, so the biologists have a certain ways of doing things. Okay, so if you're a chemist, you're a novice. So anything goes. Okay, when you're in the learning process, basically. So, okay, so you bring solution set which the other people might not have thought about it. Okay, so that's an interesting thing about the future of all of young people, basically. Okay, don't hesitate to walk into another domain and learn from them, basically. So that's why I made a comment on the astronomy club last time around. Okay, to walk 400 feet from my Yadanapalli hall to the main building, it took 40 years for me to go and talk to them in their vernacular, okay, in their language, okay. So only the vernacular is different, okay, but don't get intimidated by that, okay. So walking across discipline is very important. So So in terms of like what the fundamental thing is like you need to take a TOEFL and take a GRE and also a GRE what they call subject test if you score quite well, and the chemists get funded quite well. You don't have to have money. Okay, I had only I had to pay only for my the air ticket, nothing else. Okay, everything was paid because the admission was, I mean, like if you get a reasonably good score and you can get good financial aid from the institution for a PhD, master's and PhD, especially chemists. Okay, so we have good opportunity. So finance should not be your concern. Okay, and your focus is important in the beginning, and then you keep your antenna up also to the outside. Did I answer that question?
Good. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So there are a couple of questions I see, but it is coming and going kind of a thing. So one of them is related to, I don't know whether it's in the chat or. Oh yeah, I think it's in the chat. Okay. There's one of the questions is basically how do you separate gas from liquid? What do you need? Like, why does the gas and liquid separate in Earth? What is it? It's gravity, right? That's the reason why the liquids are this thing gas. So the way in which you create gravity is basically is a centrifuge, right? So if you don't have a centrifuge, basically the whole system. Okay, so what we call the human centrifuge, you take your tube and blood, for example. So if you want to solid and the liquid, if you want to separate them, and in simple things, you just take the test tube and then swirl it in, okay, in the microgravity, so it becomes, you're giving it gravity, so it separates. When we are building the hardware, so what basically we do, we pump, okay. So as a result of having the pumping system, so you are able to generate the same kind of effect. So that's what about how do you separate gas and the liquid part of it. The next question was, how about the space capsule? What do they contain, sir? And how are they mainly used for? When you mean space capsules, it's a human space capsules, or I do not know.
Yes, sir, humans.
Okay. See the capsule, all of them look kind of like, right? Except for your space shuttle, it looks like an airplane, right? So when you're coming from, as soon as you go beyond about 1,000 miles away from your Earth, when you're coming back, it is a critical period, okay? Meaning like the interaction of your, because it comes close to when you're entering about 12,500 miles an hour, okay? So that one, when it is interacting with the atmosphere, the friction is enormous, okay? So that is the reason why it's aerodynamically designed like that. And then you, at the bottom, this is again chemistry, it's a polymer chemistry, okay? So you have a coating at the bottom of the capsule so that all these things, like when it gets heated up, those things, polymer layers will come out one by one, basically. So to protect the humans in the space. That is why it's aerodynamically designed like that. So inside the capsule, we have minimum for at least 1 day or 2 days supplies, whether it's oxygen, it's a food, so all those things are then all the controls, okay? So you have both capabilities. There is a pilot, they can maneuver the capsule too, or we can also remotely control when you're close to Earth. Okay? If it is Mars, no, we cannot do that. Okay? But when you're close to Earth, we can do that. So those are the things that we explain. Then we have, when you're coming from a microgravity to gravity, so then all your fluid from your head side thing will pull to your leg. So you want to bring the fluid back again to your head, brain. Otherwise, you will faint. Okay. So we have compression socks. Okay. So if you do long-term international flights, you need to have a compression socks. Okay. So that is the reason for it. So we have compression socks for individual crew members. And another question is a very general question. Are we alone in the universe? So I gave you a picture of, in terms of the universe, how small an entity we are, right? And so what we're looking for is basically, so our assumption is, okay, our assumption is based on whatever we know. What we know is very, very little, right? So the assumption is you need to have the right atmosphere, okay? And you need to have the right component for the humans to evolve and survive. So we are looking for planets which are close to this kind of a things, meaning the distance from whatever the sun they have in their domain, and the distance between the sun and that planet, or potentially they may live. Okay, so that is one of them. So we have discovered at least about 400 planets, but it's all telescope, right? So you can do now. The next step is basically what is in their atmosphere. That's okay. You need to have an potential in atmosphere also. Okay, so these are all what I call conventional human knowledge-based approach. Remove yourself from this conventional one. There may be a place where you have the so-called humans could be made up of silicon. Imagine, so you're a chemist, right? So remove carbon from silicon, right? Your entire system is silicon, right? If you replace with a silicon-based life system of some kind, your dimension may be very small, but your capacity may be quite high, right? Because you did not take your imagination to that place. So you need to look for those kind of things also. So that is what I call out of the box thinking. Then come back to Mars. Okay, I showed you the Jezero crater. It looked exactly like Kaveri going into the this thing, right, into the sea, ocean. Imagine all the ocean is drained, all your Kaveri river is drained. How the delta will look like, right? That's how it looks like, right? Meaning, if you have that kind of an atmosphere 4 billion years ago, for some reason, something is taken out of from that particular planet, right? So if you are able to get little more knowledge base from that system, you will be able to have an understanding. Things were there and it disappeared for for a reason, with almost like a very like it did not give any what they call the residual to get anything about it also, because we have some what they call Mars meteorite. We try to analyze that one, and it looks like a magnetite thing in a worm kind of stuff. So, but there's no guarantee like whether it is inorganic in origin or a biological in origin, right? So those are initial results, right? But in the future, I think like we'll get to know them a lot, basically. Then another
Good
one
evening.
is
This is
go ahead. Yeah.
Dr. Esther from PG program of Food Chemistry and Food Processing. I would
Okay.
like to know what are the recent developments in nutraceuticals for the space astronauts. And as you mentioned, most of the food should be dried. So how do they make sure the stability of nutraceuticals?
So we have reasonably a robust program. So when you do freeze dry this one, we also then the lifetime also, right? Supposing like I'm pre-positioning this freeze dried food for about a year, right? So we need to find out where this the nutrients are, to what extent they are decayed, right? So we do very extensive analysis actually. Okay, before we produce that, we do micro analysis also. Then the nutrient analysis before, after packaging, then after storing it in the condition for a long time. Because right now we are doing testing for 5 years. Okay, so but for all the space station missions, we have done it for 1 year. Okay, all the essential nutrients we test them also. Okay. And if they fall apart, okay, and it will not be in our menu, okay. So when you're doing the freeze drying itself, you are protecting a number of nutrients, right? Because you remove the potential things. I think at some point, maybe next semester, I'll give you a talk on antioxidants and food material, and then I have a food technology person also who can come and talk to you also. So they'll give you a lot more detail. But those are the initial experiments we do. So we have a good assessment. So we have a nutritional chemist. Basically, then we have food chemists, and we have processing people, and then very extensive, like in a microbiology lab, and then a chemical lab also. So we have all these infrastructure built in. So we have a reasonably good understanding, okay, of how those pharmaceuticals are basically degraded. Oxygen and water. Those are the two key components for any accelerated degradation. Did I get to this thing?
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Dr.
sir.
Esther? Yeah. There is another question in the chat. You mentioned about lack of gravity affecting humans. It's not possible to create artificial gravity. That's a good question. We have done some work on it. Okay, the idea is basically your entire space vehicle can be rotated. Okay, so if you're rotating, you get a gravitational component, right? So engineering-wise, that is a very challenging part. Okay, so that is the reason why that kind of vehicle is not built yet. Then another idea was basically you can have a smaller zone where a particular room can be rotated in a huge vehicle. Okay, and you go and stay there for 2 hours or 4 hours per day. And we did a what they call centrifuge experiment in terrestrial conditions, basically. So when we put them in the centrifuge, what happens is basically going in and out of gravitational field. The adaptation component of the human system is bothered a lot more than the benefit what we get. Okay, so one is the engineering cost versus benefit analysis. You did not pass the other thing. Maybe in the later stage, supposing you discover a system, a propulsion system which is outstanding, then you can do it. But until that time, we are not going to do it. These are the chat things I saw so far. Oh, there are a lot more here up front. Sorry, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, students in the chat box.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I missed that part.
Yes. I think some of the questions are getting repeated. Some of the things getting repeated.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's an artificial gravity question. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, any other question? Yeah.
Good evening. This is Pranisha from the Department of Chemistry. I would like to know, after the mission is complete, it's a general question, sir. After the mission is complete, how long will it take for the astronauts to lead a normal life in the Earth, sir?
Okay. Maybe I can show you a video that will be very helpful. Let's see whether it is there. Okay, so let me explain it. Okay, so if I can find the video, I'll show it to you. So when you are coming from, like, one of the important parts is basically when you're in the space, what happens is your neurovestibular system is completely gone. What it means is there is no up or down. See, when you're in the Earth, okay, when you're falling down, you're coming back up. There are three feedback mechanisms. Okay? Your eye is telling you you're falling. Your ear cells, the hair cells, it's telling you you're falling, and your feedback from your leg is basically you're telling you you're falling, right? So these three gets processed in your brain, and then you come back, right? So when you're coming back, so in microgravity, all of them are gone. No gravity, okay? There's no up or down. Your cells got messed up because when you're moving forward, it is thinking like you're falling, right? So when you're coming back, what happens is they will not be able to even walk properly. Okay, so then you are just to give you an example. Okay, so when you're in the bed, when you want to get out of the bed, what do you do first? Just put your leg down, right? And in space, you don't have to put your leg down. So you just slide away, right? So as soon as you come back, what they do is they try to do the same thing because your brain is tuned for 6 months that way, right? So they can fall off the bed. They forget to put your leg down first, okay? And then, so if you watch let me check whether I can get the picture. When they land, if they move their head, what happens is it looks as though the whole world is spinning. Okay, so basically, like they'll get disoriented big times, and then they will throw up big time. Okay, that's why when you watch the astronaut when he's landed, when somebody's asking a question from the side, only the eyes will move, the head will not move. Okay, so we do this neuro assessment basically in the beginning. as soon as they land, 1 hour after that, for 14 days. Okay, and we have a baseline for all these people also. Okay, and before they fly, and so for them, some of them, to get their activities back together, it takes up to 7 days, a maximum 14 days. They are not allowed to drive, or for pilots, they cannot fly because your orientation is basically totally lost, right? And then, supposing we ask them to do a sobriety test and everything, like walk on tandem walk, basically, they will not be able to do at all, okay, as soon as they land. Because your leg, the muscle part of it, and your neurovestibular, all of them get basically messed up, okay? It doesn't know what to do. Okay? So it takes about 7 days to 14 days. So then your muscle, right? So we do very intense rehabilitation part of it, and then we give all. If necessary, we'll keep them also like quarantine for 7 days if necessary. Otherwise, it takes about 7 days to.
Thank you, sir.
Understanding from the unknown, comprehension from the cosmos, insight from infinite. The relationship between the discovery and exploration has driven human curiosity for all of recorded history. I hope this lecture series has provided each one of us with new insight. And on the behalf of the entire department, thank you, sir, for your valuable time. Gratitude
Yeah,
is
thank you.
one of the greatest
Go ahead.
virtues, but parent of all others. I would like to welcome Dr. A. Vijayakumar, the Secretary of Loyola Chemical Society, for thanking ceremony.
Good evening to all for being with us. It is a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the Department of Chemistry to all who have helped to make this memorable online program. Let me first of all start by giving glory to the Almighty God for making this online lecture a resounding success. First and foremost, I thank our special guest, Dr. Antony Jeevarajan, Deputy Division Chief, Biomedical Research and Environmental Science Division, NASA, Johnson Space Center, USA, for his very interesting lecture on human space exploration, a chemist's perspective. The department is grateful to our Reverend Father Principal, Dr. A. Thomas S.J., for his words of encouragement, his able guidance, and has always encouraged us. My heartfelt thanks to Mr. Masiullah, the coordinator, Loyola International Chapter of Alumni, for the valuable contribution to this lecture series. I owe special gratitude to the head Department of Chemistry, Dr. D. Suresh Kumar, who provided constant support to execute the program. Last but not the least, I thank all the staff members and the students for the participation and cooperations in making this program a memorable one. Once again, I thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. The program ends now.
Yeah, thank you so much.